Luxury is a promise. Wood veneer on the dashboard promises craftsmanship. A badge on the boot lid promises prestige. A price tag with an extra nought on the end promises that whatever's underneath must be worth it. British car makers understood this better than almost anyone, and time and again, they leaned on that promise a little harder than the engineering underneath could actually support. Today, we're counting down 10 British luxury cars that looked the part, sounded the part, and charged buyers accordingly, but which hid something rather less impressive under the leather and walnut. Sometimes it was an ordinary family car dressed up and sold at a premium. Sometimes it was a genuinely ambitious idea let down by a fatal engineering flaw. And at number 1, we'll meet a car so synonymous with British luxury that its name is still used as shorthand for wealth itself. And yet, for decades, owning one meant living with one of the most notoriously complicated and expensive to maintain machines Britain ever built. Let's get into it. Number 10. The Ford Zodiac Executive Mark IV. Ford's Zodiac Executive was meant to be the plushest thing to wear a Ford badge in Britain. Power steering, a sunroof, and the biggest 6-cylinder engine Ford of Britain offered as standard. All wrapped in a vast, American-influenced body that looked every inch the company chairman's car. The trouble was under the skin. Ford's engineers had squeezed a bulky new V6 engine into the nose, and rather than find room elsewhere, they simply relocated the spare wheel to sit under the bonnet ahead of the engine. A decision that made the executive dramatically front-heavy. Combined with a fairly basic McPherson strut front end, never quite sorted for the extra weight, road testers of the era criticised the result for poor road holding and clumsy handling, a genuine problem for a car meant to convey chairman-level confidence and control. Around 150,000 Mark IVs were built across Zephyr and Zodiac variants combined, but the executive earned a reputation summed up bluntly by one owner decades later as living down to the rubbish reputation the range picked up in period. All the luxury fittings in the world couldn't disguise a car that struggled to hide its own spare tyre properly. Number 9. The Vauxhall Viscount. Vauxhall's Viscount looked at a glance like an entirely different animal from the ordinary Cresta PC parked next to it in the showroom. A vinyl roof, hand-painted coach lines along each flank to suggest genuine coach-built craftsmanship, a walnut dashboard, and a coronet badge that all but promised nobility on wheels. Strip away the trim though, and the Viscount was mechanically identical to the Cresta PC beneath it. Same 3.3-litre 6-cylinder engine, same running gear, same everything under the bonnet. The coach-painted appearance wasn't paint applied by a coach builder at all. It was a simulated effect, hand-painted onto an ordinary pressed steel production body to suggest a level of craftsmanship the car didn't actually have. Buyers evidently noticed the gap between marketing and reality, or simply didn't feel it was worth the premium. Vauxhall built over 53,000 Crestas across the PC's run, but only around 7,000 Viscounts. A car sold almost entirely on the promise of what its paintwork implied, rather than anything mechanically different underneath. Number 8. The Humber Imperial. By 1964, Roots needed an answer to BMC's increasingly popular Vanden Plas division, so they dusted off the old Imperial name and applied it to a specially trimmed, top-of-the-range version of the aging Super Snipe. Automatic transmission, power steering, reclining seats, and adjustable dampers, all designed to suggest a genuinely modern executive flagship. The problem was, the basic Super Snipe body shell underneath was already the better part of a decade old by the time the Imperial name reappeared, riding on a platform that dated back to 1957. No amount of reclining seats or extra chrome could disguise the fact that buyers were paying flagship prices for what remained, fundamentally, an aging 1950s design, competing against genuinely modern rivals from Rover, Triumph, and Jaguar. Sales told the story clearly enough. Super Snipe and Imperial production, which had once run at 6,000 or 7,000 cars a year, had fallen to little more than 1,000 annually by the time both the Super Snipe and the Imperial were quietly discontinued in March 1967. A flagship built on a platform everyone else had already moved past. Number 7. The Vanden Plas Princess 1100/1300. Few cars in British motoring history embody the art of the badge quite like the Vanden Plas Princess 1100 and 1300. Underneath its imposing chrome radiator grille, leather seats and walnut dashboard sat exactly the same Isogonus-designed front-wheel drive underpinnings as the humble Austin & Morris 1100. The very same family hatchback shape that hundreds of thousands of ordinary British buyers drove to work every day. BMC's thinking was shrewd rather than dishonest. Older buyers downsizing from a Jaguar or Rover could keep the comfort and prestige trim of a much larger car in a smaller, easier-to-park package. And for many, that trade genuinely worked. But it was, by any definition, the same mechanical package as a car costing a fraction of the price, distinguished mainly by an oversized grille that BMC's own engineers reportedly nicknamed for how comically large it looked relative to the rest of the little car. A mini-sized family saloon, wearing a grille borrowed from a much grander car's imagination. Number 6. The MG CGT. When MG unveiled the MGC in 1967, it was pitched as the natural successor to the much-loved Austin Healey 3000. A genuine six-cylinder Grand Tourer, more powerful than any MG before it, ready to carry the torch for British six-cylinder sports cars into a new decade. The reality landed rather differently. To fit the new 2,912 cubic centimetre six-cylinder engine into the existing MGB body shell, engineers had to push it further forward than ideal, and the engine itself was around 95 kilograms heavier than the four-cylinder unit it replaced, badly upsetting the car's weight balance. Early press cars, additionally fitted with the wrong tyre pressures at launch, understeered noticeably, and road testers complained of heavy steering and a car that felt cumbersome rather than sporting. Reviewers noted it looked almost identical to the far cheaper MGB, doing little to justify the price gap. Just 9,000 examples were built across both Roadster and GT versions before production quietly ended in 1969, barely 2 years after a launch that had promised so much more. Number 5. The Austin 3-litre BMCs. Austin 3-litre arrived in 1968, promising to be a genuine flagship. A spacious, six-cylinder executive saloon to sit above the company's popular 1800 range, competing directly with Rover, Triumph, and Ford's biggest offerings. Underneath its long bonnet and hydrolastic self-leveling suspension, though, the 3-litre was awkwardly built around the passenger doors and cabin of the far cheaper Austin 1800. Simply stretched with a longer nose and boot tacked on. A compromise contemporary critics summed up as a gentleman's barge. Genuine leather upholstery, standard on true luxury rivals, wasn't even offered. Buyers got good quality vinyl instead, dressed up with wood veneer to suggest a grandeur the interior didn't fully deliver. The straight-six engine, related to the Austin Healey 3000's unit, proved chronically underpowered for the car's considerable weight, and many surviving examples were eventually scrapped due to premature engine failure. Sales never came close to the 50 cars a week BMC needed simply to break even. Just 9,992 were built across a 3-year run before the whole project was quietly abandoned. Number 4. The Jensen Interceptor. On paper, the Jensen Interceptor had everything a British luxury Grand Tourer needed. a strikingly elegant Italian-designed steel body from Vignale of Milan, a thunderous Chrysler V8 under the bonnet, and a genuinely opulent hand-stitched leather interior that rivaled anything from Aston Martin. The trouble was in the hand-built part of that description. Jensen was a small, low-volume manufacturer, and build quality from the factory floor was, by multiple accounts, patchy. Panel fit and finish that didn't always match the glamour of the styling around it. The car's enormous 7.2-litre V8 also proved a serious liability once the 1973 oil crisis hit, returning as little as 13.6 miles to the gallon at a moment when fuel-thirsty luxury cars had become deeply unfashionable. Combined with financial losses from Jensen's separate Jensen-Healey sports car venture, the company was pushed into receivership in 1975, and Interceptor production finally ended in 1976. A genuinely beautiful car, undone in part by the very brand promise of hand-built British craftsmanship it was sold on. Number 3. The Vanden Plas Princess 4-litre R. In 1964, BMC pulled off something no other mass-market British manufacturer had ever managed, persuading Rolls-Royce to sell them an actual Rolls-Royce engine. The resulting Vanden Plas Princess 4-litre R, fitted with a 3,909 cubic centimetre aluminium Rolls-Royce FB66, was pitched as a genuinely rare thing. A compact executive saloon with true Rolls-Royce pedigree under the bonnet, priced over 50% higher than the ordinary 3-litre Princess it replaced. The problem was that almost nobody outside the showroom could tell the difference. Beyond the removal of the old model's rear fins, the 4-litre R looked nearly identical to the cheaper car it was meant to eclipse, leaving buyers to pay a substantial premium for an engine badge most passers-by would never notice. Reliability problems also dogged the car in period, and the sales network built to support it was oddly mismatched. Jaguar dealers found it a hard sell against their own Mark X, while Triumph and MG dealers had customers who wanted sports cars, not stately saloons. After an initial surge of curiosity, sales slowed to a trickle, and only around 6,555 examples were built before the model was quietly dropped in 1968. Its Rolls-Royce partnership never repeated. Number 2. The Triumph Stag. Few British luxury cars promised more on paper than the Triumph Stag. Launched in 1970, it combined a striking Michelotti-designed Grand Tourer body, a distinctive integrated roll bar, and Triumph's own purpose-built 3.0-litre V8, a genuinely credible rival to 6-cylinder GTs from Mercedes-Benz and BMW at roughly half the price. What buyers actually got, in far too many cases, was a car that overheated. Cost-cutting during development saw Triumph switch to a cheaper head gasket supplier whose parts failed at an alarming rate, while casting sand left inside the engine's water passages restricted coolant flow on many examples straight from the factory. The result was a well-documented tendency for cylinder heads to warp after as little as 25,000 miles once overheating set in, with owners and even some dealers unaware that the alloy-headed, iron-blocked engine needed a corrosion-inhibiting antifreeze that many hadn't been told to use. Motoring writers have since called the Stag one of the most underrated cars of its era, once properly sorted. But in period, the damage to Triumph's reputation was severe, and the Stag never fully recovered the trust it lost in its first difficult years on sale. Number 1. The Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. And so we arrive at the ultimate British luxury statement, the car whose very name has become a byword for wealth itself. Launched in 1965, the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow promised the smoothest, most serene motoring experience money could buy, riding on an advanced self-leveling hydraulic suspension system, with hydraulics also powering the brakes. That same advanced hydraulic system, adapted from technology pioneered by Citroën, turned out to be the Shadow's defining weakness. The triple-circuit braking and self-leveling suspension required scrupulous, expensive maintenance. Accumulators, hoses, and fluid needing regular attention, with specialists suggesting owners budget several £1,000s a year simply to keep the system healthy. Neglect it, and the consequences ranged from a car that sagged visibly at the back to a genuine loss of braking power, serious enough that Rolls-Royce itself issued a safety notice about potential cracking in the accumulator valve casings. The unitary steel body was also notably prone to rust around the sills, wheel arches, and front pillars, an unglamorous problem for a car priced among the most expensive in Britain. None of this stopped the Silver Shadow becoming one of the best-selling Rolls-Royces ever built, and a well-maintained example remains a genuinely wonderful thing to drive. But for decades, well-maintained was doing an enormous amount of work in that sentence, hiding just how much complexity and cost sat behind the most famous grille in Britain. 10 cars, 1 recurring lesson. In the world of British luxury motoring, the badge on the boot lid and the price on the windscreen didn't always tell the whole story. Sometimes the deception was harmless, just an ordinary car in a nicer coat. Sometimes it was a genuinely ambitious idea let down by an engineering shortcut nobody wanted to admit to. And sometimes, as with our number 1, it was simply the price of admission to owning the most famous name in luxury motoring at all. Which of these caught you by surprise? Let us know in the comments which luxury car you'd have been fooled by. And if you'd like to see the opposite list, ordinary-looking British cars that turned out to be secretly brilliant, we've got you covered too. Thanks for watching British Motor Memories. See you in the next one.